Hi, this is Dr. K, and in today's episode, I want to talk about a way to achieve our goals and how to overcome the struggles with goal achieving. Let's start. So, have you ever struggled with achieving your goals? I'm sure you have. I have, certainly. It happens often in the beginning of the year when another month is passing, and it's the time when most of us have probably already abandoned our New Year's resolutions. And the gyms are getting empty, the healthy food in the fridge is just a distant memory. And many people are left with a sense of guilt that they failed again. And a funny thing is that it's quite often related to things that are beneficial to us, like eating healthy, be more physically active, and so on. So today, I want to reflect on why it's so difficult to do things that are undeniably beneficial. And there is hardly any doubt that eliminating high processed foods from our diet and cutting down on smoking or increasing physical activity is good not only for the physical health, but it's also beneficial for our mental health. And what's more, these changes usually they don't require significant sacrifices or effort. So what exactly prevents us from implementing them? And it turns out that despite their apparent simplicity, adopting new habits is a complex and often, unfortunately, unsuccessful process. And most of us, or maybe even I could risk the sentence that all of us, at least once in our lives, have experienced the phenomenon referred to as the intention-behavior gap. And in philosophy, this phenomenon is described by the Greek term akrasia, meaning weakness of the will. And to put it simply, it's the disparity between what we plan or what we want to do and our actual actions. So between what we want and how we behave to achieve it. So, for example, we decide to start eating clean food from Monday on. This is our intention. This is my intention. From Monday on, I want to eat clean food. But I spend whole Sunday watching TV or playing video games. So obviously, I don't have time to prepare food for Monday. So I end up buying a chocolate bar on the way to work, and after I come back from work, I order pizza, and that's the end of clean food. So this is the behavior. And this kind of discrepancy applies to many areas, from adopting healthier habits to improving work organization or building good relationships. However, it's quite easy to notice that there is a variability in achieving plans. While some people try to quit smoking for the 5th time this year, other people stick to their New Year's resolution and they haven't bought a single pack of cigarettes in 2024. And moreover, for the same person, some goals are easier to achieve while others seem impossible. So what exactly influences these differences? And I found several moderators that have been identified in research. And these moderators are they are related to goal itself. They are related to intention. They are related to personality, or I should say, they are related to personal traits. And finally, they can be related to socio-demographic characteristics. So let's go through all these 4 moderators. So moderators that are related to the goal include subjective perception of the goal as easy or difficult to achieve. So the goals perceived as easy to achieve usually involve a smaller gap between intention and behavior, unlike those perceived as extremely difficult. And it often happens that for fear of failure, we give up trying to achieve difficult goals because before we even seriously engage in pursuing them. And additionally, if a goal is of high priority, we will be putting more effort into its achievement. So, for example, if we think about someone who wants to run a marathon in less than 3 hours, for someone who's running marathons on a daily basis or on a weekly basis, this goal would be easy. So they will be highly motivated to achieve it. But for someone who spent last 20 years on the couch, this kind of goal will be perceived as extremely difficult. So there's a high risk that intention behavior gap is too large for this person. And they end up not even trying. And the second moderators are factors related to intention, and they primarily include motivation and opportunities to fulfill intentions. And if our plans stem from instinct motivation, meaning we ourselves want to change or achieve something, we will do everything to make it happen. So an example of the difference between in-string and X-string motivation would be a situation where we have to learn some material. For example, we're studying and we have to learn something. And in the case of content that is interesting us and we want to delve into it ourselves just because it's interesting, this in-string motivation is not only seems easier, but we also eagerly seek additional information on the topic. However, with material we simply need to learn to pass the exam, and material which is completely not interesting to us, and passing the exam would be extrinsic motivation, we can come up with the most creative activities just to postpone the moment of starting to study. It's, by the way, called procrastination. And of course, it's not surprising that the ease of achieving goals and maintaining adequate motivation can be associated with personality characteristics. And research doesn't provide a clear answer regarding the relationship between personality traits and success in achieving a set goal. But in the context of physical activity and healthier eating, conscientiousness is relatively stably associated with effective goal achievement. And conscientiousness largely correlates with the ability to control impulses. So people rated high on the conscientiousness scale will find it easier to control and therefore block, for example, the desire to snack between meals. So this might be kind of intercorrelated, but of course there are many factors influencing our motivation and ability to achieve goals. So conscientiousness is just one of them. And finally, social demographic characteristics have also been the subject of analysis of the relationship between intention behavior gap. But in most studies, there was no or very weak correlation found. The only stable correlation have been found between socioeconomic status and intention behavior gap. And specifically, individuals with lower socioeconomic status, so those people who are not very well off, they had a lower chance of achieving the intended goal. And socioeconomic status is commonly associated with health inequalities and access to healthcare. And interestingly, this relationship can be understood bidirectionally. So firstly, worsening health can lead to a decline in socioeconomic status, which is particularly evident in conditions that have a sudden and radical impact on human functioning, such as schizophrenia or, for example, spinal cord injury. And secondly, lower socioeconomic status, including difficult living conditions, lower financial resources, or limited access to education, this precedes poorer health. And many factors contribute to this, such as lower quality products used in daily diet, chronic stress due to financial concerns, or simply lack of time for preventive health checkups. And all these make socioeconomic status not only persistent determinants of health inequalities, but what's even more important, one of the most difficult to eliminate. And based on research and clinical observations, scientists and therapists have tried to develop the most effective methods to help in effectively pursuing a goal. And of course, the goals patients come with vary greatly, and from those related to health to goals related to work or time management. So the more patients, the more goals usually we observe. And therefore, we needed, as psychologists, as counselors, as therapists, we needed a method that as universal and flexible as possible. And analysis of research on decision-making process and effectiveness in pursuing goals have led to the identification of 5 rules that increase the chance of success in achieving a goal. And these 5 rules are known as SMART, and it comes from an acronym. I mean, this is an acronym for the English words specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and timely or time-bound. It depends on the goal. So let's try now to apply these rules to probably the most commonly made resolution, which is I need to exercise more. We all want to be more physically active. We not often have that much time to be physically active, but we really want to be more active. So let's try to apply these rules. Such a goal, as I said, I need to exercise more, is quite far from being specific and does not provide any direction for our actions. However, it can be reformulated to sound more specific. So for example, I will go for a half-hour walk 3 times a week. It is more exercise than usually, but it's not the very general I need to exercise more. This is very specific. I will go for a half-hour walk 3 times a week. So with this simple adjustment, we already create a certain action plan, and by reformulating the goal, it becomes measurable. So I know for how long, and I know how many times. And it's no longer an abstract resolution, but it has specific quantifiable characteristics that we can verify later. So let's consider whether such a stated goal is achievable. So it seems that finding 30 minutes 3 times a week isn't a big challenge for most people. And in fact, many people at this stage might think that it's even too easy. So, well, I can go for 2 hours walk, or I can find half an hour every day. Yes, you can. I know you can. But it's worth resisting the temptation and starting with small steps. Because if a person who has led a mostly sedentary lifestyle suddenly decides to walk for 2 hours every day, there's a good chance that they will quickly get bored, or some random events will prevent them from finding time every day. And it's important to remember that each failure, and even though it is not my personal failure, it's just possibly some random events that made it impossible to go for a walk every day, but we personally treat it as failure, and each failure decreases our motivation and the likelihood of achieving the goal. So in this case, it decreases the likelihood of achieving the goal. So in this case, it's better to set ego aside for a while, and gradually but systematically work towards the goal. So yes, let's spend 3 weeks on walking every other day for half an hour, and if we achieve it, we can increase the length of the walk, or we can do it, for example, 4 times a week. And the achievability dimension of the goal is also the one most closely related to external factors, which could explain the differences in the effectiveness of achieving goals among people with different socioeconomic status. While for most people finding 30 minutes isn't a problem, for those working 2 jobs or taking care of dependent relatives, it can be a huge challenge. So this might be the reason why socioeconomical status is have such an impact on goal achievability. But here's a word from me. Socioeconomical status or other relevant factors cannot be treated as excuses. So there's a huge difference between struggle because of socioeconomic status and other external factors, and there's a huge difference between them and between looking for excuses. The penultimate rule, relevance, directly refers to our subjective belief about the goal. And if we want to feel better or be more agile and believe it's good for us, we have a good chance of sticking to our resolutions. However, if it's secondary to us, and our biggest dream right now isn't improving health or appearance, but the most important dream for us, or the most important goal for us, is, for example, mastering the basics of Swedish, it might be better to focus on what stems from our instinct motivation. So maybe it's better to stick with Swedish and not with walking. But it's, of course, this is our job to identify our goals and to rate how much relevant they are for us. And lastly, we need to ask ourselves about time. Well, this dimension can be considered in 2 ways. The first is to determine whether our action is planned at the right time. So it will be difficult for us to achieve the goal of walking if we've just had a cast removed from a broken leg. So maybe we should postpone it to a few months later. And the second is to determine time frames for the action. So for example, specifying that we will walk 3 times a week for half an hour for the next 3 months. Okay, so we set time frames. And considering that regularly repeated activities become habits after some time, it will be easier for us to maintain physical activity if we set specific time frames in advance. So if we achieve our goal of walking 3 times a week for 3 months, after 3 months, it will become the habit. So after 3 months, we wouldn't have to think about time management and so on. We would just walk. And that's the magic of habits. We just have to repeat it for some time, and sometimes we need to force ourselves to do it. But after it becomes habit, after it becomes automatic, we wouldn't even notice that we are doing it. So even if we struggle at the very beginning, stick to your goal and it will become easier to achieve them. And I hope this episode helped you a little bit. Thank you for listening, and until next time.